365 or 366 days a year, depending on whether it's a leap year or not. And there we go, that's the lighting I wanted. And we are doing our second part of our Q&A, Ask Me Anything, carrying on from yesterday, where we had a July 4th special for 2 hours. After we're done here at 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, we will be jumping on over to X, where I will continue for another hour until 8 p.m. Eastern. Really looking forward to it. And for the next hour or so, I will be answering all of your questions related to history, social studies, and the like, as I do every Friday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern on the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. And then Sunday, tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, we are doing a live stream lecture about the founding of America, the American Revolution, and the Declaration of Independence in honor of 4th of July. So really looking forward to that live stream lecture tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. Gaia Han, good to see you as always. If you guys enjoy history and social studies, consider liking and subscribing. I will try to answer all of your questions in a timely, neighborly, amicable manner. Of course, if we get a lot of people, it might be really hard for me to answer all of your questions, so I'm going to do my best to get through the chat as much as I can. I'm going to move a little more speedily and not get distracted. So, Humphrey, hello. Gaian's asking, do Russians view civilization history through the lens of the Roman Empire, ancient Greece, as we do here in the West? Yes, the West does. The German Empire, the French, the British, they've all kind of compared themselves to the Romans at one way or another. Look at the buildings in the United States. Look at the Capitol. Look at the White House. Look at the designs of Monticello and Mount Vernon, the homes of the Founding Fathers. These men were highly inspired by neoclassicism, the Renaissance, and the ideas of the Enlightenment, and a callback to the Roman Empire. They developed the American political system based off the Roman Empire, the Roman Republic. The Russian Empire, not so much. They're based in a understanding of the Byzantine or Eastern Roman Empire. That's why they use the Byzantine double eagle, the double-headed eagle. One holds a cross, meaning the religious, the sacred. One holds a sword, the secular phase, the civil government and authority. That's how the Russian Empire has worked. It's seen itself more in the light of the Byzantines, the Eastern Roman Empire, which became something all to itself after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Can you talk a bit about Eastern civilization? Did Russia try to westernize in the 17th century? Did they see themselves as Byzantine? What is it meant by Eastern if we also call Chinese Eastern? So Eastern usually refers to non-Western, but there is a distinction between them. Non-Western peoples are, although South Americans, Latin American history is considered non-Western in the sense that it's not Eurocentric. Eurocentric Western history typically refers to Europe, the United States, and Canada. Latin America is typically seen as non-Western in some ways, although it is technically in the Western hemisphere. It's non-Eurocentric. Africa is considered non-Western history because it's not Eurocentric. Eastern history would refer to Asia, the Middle East, and Russia is sometimes. Eastern Europe is seen as somewhat different. The influence of the Ottoman Empire makes it a little bit different. So Russia did try to modernize in the 17th century. And whenever Russia tried to modernize, it tried to become more Eurocentric, more Western, and less connected to its Eastern roots, to the Mongol conquest, to things like that. And it did it several times, especially at the end of the 1600s, the 17th century, under Peter the Great, where they would actually be pretty successful in becoming a European power by the end of his reign in 1725. This is the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. Thank you for joining us. This is our second part of our weekend Q&A, where you can ask me anything you'd like regarding history, social studies, and everything. So if you enjoy that, consider liking and subscribing. Hello, Solomon. Good to see you. John, great to see you. Thank you so much. Good to see you from yesterday. And those are our social media handles put in by my wonderful moderator, Harsonet. So please follow us there. And you can jump on and join us on X for another hour of Q&A at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So we've got an hour here and then an hour there. Watched any movies this week? I haven't. I've been watching Breaking Bad. Hello from Germany. Hello, Lewis. Africa R. Great to see everybody. I hope you all are having a great day. And we've got people from Russia. Nice to see you. Started around the South Pacific at the beginning of time, as the stone carvings say. I don't know what you're referring to, Tay. Let me see. Dude, you look like a cult leader. I don't feel like one. Is it the cult of very good-looking people? Because I'm good with that. Why did you get a BA instead of a BS? Bachelor of Arts in History. There wasn't a Bachelor of Science in History available at the institution where I graduated. That's why I have a BA. I have a BA in History and an MA in History as well. So if you have a question about history or social studies, I'll be happy to answer it in the next hour or so. And if you like history or you like the vibes we have here at the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, consider liking and subscribing. Do you believe in God? I say all the time on this channel, I believe in a higher power. I don't stipulate which one or what religion I belong to. Have you ever visited Brazil or Morocco? Would love to visit both of them. Know a lot about both of them. Brazil, Morocco colonized by the Spanish and the French, part of the Maghreb, North Africa, that was conquered by the Muslims in the 7th century, has a beautiful history and connection to Islam, to the first Islamic caliphates, and of course is the land of the Berbers, who were known for their aggressiveness and their spirited fighting for the Muslims in the 8th and 9th centuries. So, do you think the second coming of Jesus is near? I have no idea. Who was the leader of the Haitian Revolution? Toussaint Louverture in the early 19th century helped free the Haitians from the French. In the spirit embarking on the Haitian Revolution, he went with that. So yeah, I would love to visit both Brazil and Morocco if I got the chance. Brazil was obviously colonized by the Portuguese, and then the Portuguese royal family fled there when Napoleon attacked their country, and then they eventually became their own independent country in the 1820s. Have you ever been visit Russia, or you want to go? I would love to go to Russia. It would be awesome. I'm a Russian historian by trade, so that would be a lot of fun if I could do that. Do you discuss military history or other areas? Always ready to talk about military history. No, I haven't talked to Jack Black in a while. Love pizza. Who doesn't? Friendly history, should be careful walking to his car. Do you know something I don't know? What is the most famous food named after a historical figure? Caesar salad? I mean, I think of beef Wellington, named after Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington, who defeated Napoleon at Waterloo. Caesar salad's definitely up there. But Caesar salad is not named after Julius Caesar. It's named after the owner of an Italian restaurant in Mexico, where Americans loved to go during the 20s because you could still drink in Mexico. And one night, apparently, he ran out of food, so he just threw together whatever he had and served that to the people, and that was the Caesar salad. This, with the dressing and the anchovies and the croutons and stuff. So there you go. Hello, Crick. Great to see you. Stone carvings around the world match up to this God's fellow stone carvings. True. I don't know what you're saying. Have you been to Hawaii? Nope. Would love to go. How do you have good memory? How did you study in your time in school? I had a weird way of studying. I would write down the notes my professors gave us as like a book, and then I would just read it because I like to read. So that actually worked for me. It doesn't work for everybody, but yeah. Have you ever been to the Isle of... No, not yet. What was the Black Death? The Black Death was a form of the bubonic plague that was much worse than other plague outbreaks that were common in the medieval world. It originally found its way from mosquitoes to rats and then infected humans in Italy, and it spread all over Europe, and about a third of Europe's population to a half of it died between, I think, 1347 and 1351, and then it eventually went into Russia and China. I forget exactly where it came from. I think it came from the Middle East. Hello, Solomon. Hello, Otter. Great to see you. Friendly neighborhood historians like Otter and Jen make this channel great. And if you want to help make this channel great, consider liking and subscribing, becoming a friendly neighborhood historian on your own. Let me see. Good morning to you. Hello. Where's everyone joining us from? I'm currently in Morocco and would like to settle in Brazil. Is this a good situation or not? I don't know how Brazil is doing right now, but it's an incredible country. Beautiful. I really love it. But obviously Morocco is the home of Casablanca and so much culture and art and history there. Kind of a hard one to do. Did Churchill cause a genocide? Churchill, in order to feed British soldiers in the middle of what I consider to be the Third World War, what you probably call the Second World War, he diverted rations from the Indians to British soldiers. The constant attacks by the Japanese in Burma caused the British to do this, and this diversion of rations eventually led to the starvation of about 3 million Indians. What music do you like? What music don't I like is easier for me to say. I love classical, I love rock, I love like classic rock and stuff like that. Standards, pop music, hip hop, listen to anything. Thank you for joining us from India, from Arizona, from Brazil, from Morocco. This is my live stream AOE, and this is my Q&A where you can ask me anything you like about history or social studies. Thank you, BB, for insulting me. You really show your point. And yes, I happen to be white. I guess you took a guess. Churchill's a Freemason cult leader. He was not a Freemason. Who do you idolize? One of the things about being an American and being an American historian is you learn, although some people would love for you to idolize the founding fathers, or they'd love for you to idolize their political leader, be they Republican or Democrat. One of the best things that I like about being an American and an American historian is you learn not to idolize anyone. If you actually study history, there are people that are really great and interesting, but even so, don't idolize them. Don't idolize Churchill. Don't idolize Gandhi. These men did incredible and great things, but they were human and they were fallible. You learn as a historian and a social scientist not to idolize anyone. And Churchill did a lot of great things, but he had plenty of rough spots. Anamic, hello. Everything we see today all comes from trees. Okay then. So Hars has my social medias. You can find me in those social medias. Anthony, good to see you. Welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. So if anyone has a question about history or social studies, please drop it in the chat. I'll be happy to answer. Yes, put some history on your way. Amar, great to see you. Do you watch Stranger Things or Arcane? I need to see both of those. I've heard they're really good. I wanted to do Mad Men and Breaking Bad because I've never gotten to them, so my summer has been focused on those two after I spent the spring watching Blacklist. What additional American figure deserves a spot on Mount Rushmore? I don't know if I have enough room on Mount Rushmore. I really don't think they do. What triggered the anti-Semitic riots in the UK in 1947? I'm not sure about them, John, so I can't say. Who was Germanicus? I keep seeing memes about how he could have been emperor. Germanicus was the son... Okay, so the first Roman imperial dynasty was called the Julio-Claudians. Julio coming from Julius Caesar, Claudians coming from Claudius, who was a future Roman emperor. The Claudine line came from a marriage between Octavian and his wife Livia. Octavian, who became known as Augustus, was the first Roman emperor, and his wife was known as Livia. And Livia did everything in her power to help get her, Livia Drusilla, she's famous and infamous throughout history for many different reasons, but she did everything in her power, supposedly, according to historians like Suetonius and Tacitus, to get her son Tiberius to become emperor after Caesar. Her other son had died at a young age, and there's rumors that he was poisoned and all of this, and I, Claudius is a fantastic series, but it's, grossly... much, like a soap opera. It's soap operatic. It's like a telenovela, but it's a fascinating historical series. I know it's like 50 years old, but it's an amazing series, so go check that out. The BBC did a great job with that. But Tiberius, his brother, died, and his son, he had several children. One of them was Germanicus. And he had two boys, Germanicus and Claudius. And Claudius would become the emperor much later on. Germanicus died in battle, and people believe that Tiberius, who was finally the emperor, had him poisoned because he was jealous of how good he was. He was called Germanicus because in 9 AD, Augustus's army was wiped out at the Teutoburg Forest by a bunch of Germanic barbarians. He sent Germanicus there to stabilize the area, and Germanicus was able to defeat the Germans, so he became the Germanicus. That's how he got the nickname. His son would become emperor after Tiberius, and that man's name was Caligula. Caligula was known for basically being paranoid and going insane and ruling like a despot and turning the imperial palace into a brothel. And then when he died, he was assassinated by the Praetorian Guard. His elderly uncle Claudius became the emperor. So if you look at it, you've got Augustus, you have his wife, and she has two sons from her first marriage. One of those sons dies, and the other son becomes emperor, and he's Tiberius. The son who died, his son is Germanicus, and Germanicus's son is Caligula. So there you go. There's a quick lesson on Germanicus. I'm going to go through the history here. Who killed Vlad the Impaler? I don't know if he was killed. I think I've heard about that. I think it was some rebels. I'm not sure. Any history about Africa? Okay, let's see here. Njinga of Angola was a well-known African queen who did everything she could to resist, even dressing in male armor and leading her forces into battle in order to resist the Portuguese who had created and exploited the Angolans for slaves and goods and trade for almost a century. There's a little African history for you. What is your standard to judge what a good president is? Aniha, hello. I think a good president is someone who thinks about the American people, who knows how to play politics but doesn't only play politics, and who listens to the voice of the nation and actually does what he can, as best as he can, to legislate what he thinks will work for people. He has to make difficult decisions, and he has to be a good leader. And a good leader, like a great president, like George Washington would admit, knows what he doesn't know. Washington didn't know how banks work. That's why he had Alexander Hamilton organize the National Bank. Washington needed a great foreign diplomat to be a Secretary of State. That's why he chose Thomas Jefferson. Great leaders know what they don't know, and great leaders take the reins when they do know something. And so those are some things that a good president needs to be. What do you think of Louisiana? Louisiana was originally named, I think it was La Salle was the explorer who settled it and named it after the French king at that time, and there's been a bunch of them named Louis, and obviously the port city of New Orleans became the covetous desire of the French, the British, and the Americans. History of Norway. I'll talk a little bit about that. In the 11th century, Norway had an empire called the North Sea Empire that controlled Norway, I think it controlled Sweden and Denmark, as well as all of England. Kings like Harthacnut and Svein Forkbeard actually ruled over England as well as their lands in Scandinavia. So Norway is the home of the Vikingers, the raiders as they were actually known, who would pillage and raid, and usually to do so to get food or things that could buy them food, because being in Scandinavia, their farming was unreliable because it was so cold so much of the time of the year. Do you know when the first man came to space? That was Yuri Gagarin in 1961, Vostok 6. I think it was Vostok 6. I'm good, Ram. I hope you are good too. Why didn't the world intervene in the Rwandan genocide? I'm not 100% sure. The basic idea is because the Europeans had done so much damage to that area and had cut it along tribal lines, which had created the tensions between the Hutsis and the Tutsis, that led indirectly to the genocide actually happening. So once the Europeans decolonized and left that area behind, they didn't want to interfere so they wouldn't be seen as colonizers. But it's a horrible, horrible, the Rwandan genocide of 1995 was absolutely terrible. Let me see here. I'm going to try to catch up with the chat. I'll try to answer your questions as soon as I can. History of Mongolia. Obviously, the Mongols are best known for what Genghis Khan did in basically taking, or Temujin was his real name, taking over China, taking over Central Asia, taking over Persia, and huge swathes of what is now Russia. Yeah. Do you know, and Harry, great to see you. Do you know any history on Mongolia in the 1900s? Mongolia was the first Asian country to become communist in 1922, and for some reason, probably because of its close ties to China, the Soviet Union would never annex it or let it join its socialist republics. Favorite battle of the Civil War? I got to go with Antietam because it's what Lincoln did to make the Emancipation Proclamation, and it's a rare win for the Army of the Potomac before Ulysses S. Grant takes control. Who was the lady who loved cake but was bad to poor people? That's the story of Marie Antoinette, the famous French queen, the infamous French queen, who supposedly, when a starving mob approached her palace, said, let them eat pain. Pain is bread. It's not cake, but it's cakes like bread. And she never said this. This is totally made up. It was made up by French revolutionaries who absolutely hated her, especially because she was not French, she was Austrian, and her and Louis tried to flee to go to her brother, the Holy Roman Emperor, so that he could give them asylum during the French Revolution. So it's a made-up story. Thank you for joining us from Russia. We got people from Russia, from Morocco, from Arizona, from all over the world joining us, and Britain, of course, with Harry. King Leopold was the King of Belgium and personal owner of Congo, who was an absolute horrible human being that tortured the Belgians so that he could extract them for palm oil and rubber. Yeah, let me see here. Isn't Marie Antoinette's story a fake? Absolutely a fake. It's a historical myth, which I do on this channel as well. You look Soviet. You mean Russian? Do you know why a Holocaust happened? Sam, I think you're the same Sam. It's good to see you, although we have many different Sams on this channel. The Holocaust was the Nazis' final solution, as they called it, to what they considered to be the problem of the Jews. The Nazis basically believed that the Jews had caused all of the problems in Germany and Europe for a long time. That they are the ones who created communism, they are the ones that owned all the wealth, they are the ones that had ruined Germany's chances of winning the Great War, and because of this they did everything in their power to expel them. They tried to send them to Madagascar, and the French didn't want to do that, even after they lost in 1940. So eventually they come up with the final solution. They were already rounding them up and killing a lot of them and sending them to camps, but the final solution, probably recommended by the leader of the SS, the elite fighting force, a man named Heinrich Himmler, basically said, put them in camps and either kill them or work them until they're about to die and then kill them. And this is what led to the Holocaust. Along with the Jews, the Romani gypsy people, Slavic peoples, homosexuals, communists, and the invalid, the disabled, were all considered to be undesirables. Many of them were sent to work in labor camps and to extermination camps. You had two different types of camps, as I've talked about in my video on the Holocaust, which you guys can go check out. I have long-form videos dropping every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. But basically, the work camps, you were sent and you would work there, you would produce goods and things the Nazis would usually use in combat. You were fed a certain amount of rations, and eventually you could be taken off those rations, and rations were adjusted, and then you could be exterminated. So Auschwitz was a work camp that was also a death camp. Then there's a death camp I believe Treblinka, where basically you were sent, you were lined up, and you were executed. Eventually, getting tired of digging mass graves and shooting them, the Nazis devised this idea of gassing people using Cyclone B to basically gas them, and then they burned the remains afterwards. And this led to the deaths of between 5 to 6 million Jews and about 5 million other undesirables, as the Nazis called them. So, yeah, that's a quick explanation of why it happened. It was basically a way of taking care of undesirables who the Nazis pinned all of their problems on. Thank you for joining us from India. Let me see here. Do you play European War 7? Nope. Can you talk about the events of 2016 U.S.-Iran naval incident? The IRGC captured a naval ship, and eventually the United States agreed to pay a ransom of millions of dollars in unfrozen assets to the Iranians. I just learned about that the other day in the wake of all the other craziness with Iran. Happy Colonial Swine Treason Day to you too, Tam, and good to see you. Thank you for joining us again. Were the EU and Brexit in agreement with the UK, where Northern Ireland remained under EU rules showing who had the whip hand, or was it some other reason? The British decision for Brexit was the first step in Europe towards a swing to the right, a hard right that has basically decided not to have anything to do whatsoever with the European Union, and basically an anti-supranational movement by different countries that don't want to take in refugees and migrants from the Middle East, and don't want to be responsible for fronting the bill for that, and don't want to use the euro as their currency necessarily. And so Brexit was the first decision, and the British have never figured out how it was going to work. Her hair in a boat. Yes, I've seen that before. Ethnicity of Jesus, Semitic, Jewish, not white by any stretch, not black. To say he would look exactly like me is absurd. He was more dark-skinned than I am, to be sure, and I have a little bit of pigmentation, but yeah. I've never had that the liquid death water. I'm not sure. I'm just answering questions. If you have a question about history and social studies, I'll answer as soon as I can, I promise. I listened to your reading of the Declaration of Independence last night while watching fireworks. I just wanted to say thank you. I really appreciate that. Please go and check out that video. I read the Declaration of Independence and give some historical background on it, and my live stream tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern will be all about the Declaration of Independence, and we're going for another hour on X live after this at 7 p.m. Eastern. So, let me see here. Should I say "Dostoevanya" to those who are from Russia, and "Spasiba"? As a historian, how do you feel about executive orders reshaping Smithsonian narratives, in their words, restoring truth and sanity to American history? What do you mean? Be specific. How tall was Jesus and what was his weight? Don't know his height or his weight. Have no idea. We don't have the height or weight of many ancient historical figures, and people were shorter in the ancient world anyways due to lack of nutrition compared to today. All the premeditated criminal events from a negotiable instrument of that account. I don't know what you're talking about. Jedi scum? You mean rebel scum? Explain the New World Order. This is a fear amongst a lot of people, particularly on the right, of a rising movement or organization that controls everything. President George H.W. Bush instituted the idea of creating a new world order after the fall of the Soviet Union. A lot of people think it's the same thing as globalism, and that secret organizations like the Rothschilds or Illuminati are behind them, and basically are working to try to get everybody standardized to use one currency, no borders, and no differences between cultures, all throughout the entire world. So, let me see here. So the New World Order is seen as a globalist organization of people behind the scenes who control everything and are trying to get people to do whatever they want and live in 15-minute cities, for instance, and use one form of currency. I've already talked a little bit about this. Tell me the history of Germany. Sam, I kind of already did with the Nazi thing. What else? What other German history? The Prussians basically united all of Germany under their banner and kicked the Austrians out. And that's how Germany really became a country for the first time in the 1870s. Are presidents just puppets? I would say it's more than that. Talk about how Christopher Columbus couldn't discover a land that people were already living on. Yes, I have never said Columbus discovered America. He is not even the first European in America. The Vikings were. Columbus is the first European to come into contact with the Native Americans in 4 centuries. He was the first European he created a permanent stream of contact between Europe and North America and the New World. And that has lasted till this day. That's all. It's not discovered. He can't discover a place that people were already living on. He believed he was in India, and he was wrong about that. I don't know who Ibn Battuta is. How does it be like in World War II? You mean World War III? I believe that the Second World War is actually the Third World War, but yeah. What do you mean, how would it be like? I don't know what you mean by that. Is there any evidence that the USA is the greatest country on earth? Other than the fact that Americans love to say it. I mean, there's a lot to like about the United States, and there's a lot to criticize about the United States through its history, and I'll look at it through a historical lens. One of the things that's obviously under question, a lot of people go back and forth about it, and I talked about it a lot yesterday, and I don't want to talk about it as much today. But regardless of the political narrative and whatever side you happen to be on, one thing that has made America particularly unique is a distinct pattern of immigration. The United States has taken in far more immigrants than any other country by far. It's not even close. It still takes in more legal immigrants than any other country in the world. In fact, more than the next 3 combined, far more than Britain, far more than France, and that's just legal migration, not illegal immigrants. The United States has, and these immigrants not only become American, they assimilate, they learn English, they develop special skills, they vote, they become citizens, but they also affect the way the culture is. So American culture is the impact of Irish immigrants and the celebrations of St. Patrick's Day. It is the impact of Italian immigrants and the music of Frank Sinatra, which I love. It is all these different things. So different immigrant groups don't just come and become this, because they become something, but they also influence what that something is. It's an incredible cycle that doesn't exist as much in Europe or other places where you immigrate, because those countries are based on nationhood and ethnicity in the cornerstone. The Americans were rebelling against the British. They were an Angloid people. They don't have the uniqueness of being an Angloid people when the Angloid country is the one they split off from. So their unique distinction was being based on ideals like liberty and the pursuit of happiness and all of this stuff. So there you go. I am a terrorist from Pakistan. You shouldn't be announcing that on YouTube. Thoughts on communism, socialism. Communism and socialism, I see socialism in the more, it's ironic because Marx was an economist, but I see socialism more as a economic sphere and communism more as a cultural sphere, because if you look at China, it's still officially communist, but it's more authoritarian in certain regards, and its economy seems very interested in free trade and in market economics and in things like that, so it's not exactly communistic. So I see socialism as an economic system of nationalization of different services, redistribution of wealth, the lack of private property. Communism is a more extreme version of that usually brings about compulsion from the state to bring about those conditions. And not all socialists are communists, to be sure, but all communists are basically socialists. Where racism originated from? The more that Europeans encountered people from Africa, and the more that they enslaved them, and the more that they encountered Native Americans, and the more they enslaved them, the justification for believing that all people are created equal, which is an idea that predates the founding of the United States, has to be predicated on some sort of idea. People have always discriminated and been worried about people who are different than them. But what the Europeans did that was unique is they had the technology to access contact with peoples who were extremely different from them, and the tribalism that they brought from Europe of English versus French, French versus German, so on and so forth, they could now bring to European versus African, or white versus black. It's common for humans to fear the other. Nobody has a monopoly on racism. The Europeans have a disproportionate representation of racism and oppression because the technology allowed them to interact with peoples who were extremely different from them, like the Native Americans or the Africans. Let me see here. If you don't believe U.S. is the greatest country, then we'll bomb. Yeah. Sometimes that happens. I mean, there's plenty of Europeans who don't think the U.S. is the greatest nation, and the U.S. doesn't bomb them, so. The Sassin Empire, they were an empire, I think they started in the 3rd century. They were a Persian empire. The ruler of a Persian empire, from the Achaemenid Persians to the Parthians to the Sassanids, always referred to himself as the Shah, which is why the Shah of Iran was the last king of Iran until he was overthrown in the Islamic Revolution in the 1970s. The Sassanid Empire was kind of the filler between the rise of Islam and the fall of the Roman Empire. Between about the 3rd century and the 6th, 7th century, the Sassanid Persians were a strong, predominant empire that controlled Persia and some segments of southern Asia and the Middle East. They were constantly bickering with the Romans, and the Romans could not defeat them, just like they couldn't defeat the Parthians. A long beleaguered war between a Byzantine emperor or Eastern Roman emperor called Heraclius and the Sassanids in the 7th century weakened both countries so substantially that the Muslim Rashdun Caliphate was able to destroy the Sassanid Empire and severely cripple the Byzantines and take control of the Middle East. And from then on, Persia has been a Muslim country. So there you go. The Sassanids were a Persian empire in the 4th, 5th, 6th centuries AD. Where are you from? I'm from the United States, but I don't say exactly where from. You can guess if you'd like. In which field of history did you graduate? My master's thesis was on Russian history. That's my specialty. Let me see here. Do you know any history facts about Caucasus people? Not a huge amount. I think about the Cossacks and how the Russians brought them in and all of that stuff. I know about certain. I'm doing a series on Russian history. I know about the Drevelians and certain Slavic groups that were eventually killed off by the Kievan Rus, the Mongols, integrated in that area with Khanates and the Tatars. Who were the long-time thorn in the side of the early Muscovites and Russian peoples in the 15th and 16th and 17th centuries. So, save water, drink beer. Beer is made from water. You see that Grand Canyon water did not do that. Maybe lava. I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't look like erosion to me. Did Hannibal ever defeat the Romans? Several times. I mean, not Karahe. That was the Parthians. Defeated Marcus Licinius Crassus. Killed him. There's Trasimene. There's several other battles that he won, basically using mercenaries to thwart larger Roman forces. What the Romans eventually did to defeat Hannibal after he had been running around Italy for more than a decade was send Scipio Africanus to Africa, to North Africa, to attack the Carthaginians on their own turf, forcing him back for the ultimate defeat at Zama and the end of the Second Punic Wars. Yeah. Communism gave you 300 subscribers. That's cool. Yes, socialism is a lot less extreme and a lot more moderate than communism. Thank you for cutting down the spam. Yeah, America, yeah, whatever. Who was the first here and why? There's a reason. Okay, thank you, Tay. I appreciate it. What are we talking about? Anything you'd like. This is the Friendly Neighborhood History channel where you can ask me anything you'd like for our Q&A. We're going to go for another half hour here, then we're jumping on over to X for our first ever successful live stream on another platform. Although we have been on Instagram. And we just started our TikTok, so follow us at those handles. Hey Paisley, is it true Iran was very much advanced in terms of science, astrology, philosophy in ancient times? Yes, the Achaemenid Persians were the massive cosmopolitan advanced empire of the 5th, 4th, and 3rd centuries BC, 6th, 5th, and 4th centuries BC until Alexander destroyed them. Iran, yes, Iran, not Iran, yes. Thank you, Gilbert. I appreciate that. I try to know as much history as I can. Was Christianity produced to destroy the Roman Empire? When you consider the fact that by the end of the Roman Empire, Catholicism and the emperor were like this, probably not. Let me see. We run. That's funny. Opinions on the Holodomor of Ukrainians and Kazakhs. One of the worst Holocaust genocides in human history that doesn't get enough attention. Basically, Stalin took a bunch of people. He defamed them as the enemy, although Lenin was doing this before, and then carried out a program of actually seizing all of their land, taking all of their crop yields, and forcing them onto communal farms. The lack of products from these communal farms because of resistance and also because of compulsion, there was less production from those farms because there was less incentive than on their own private lands. The liquidation of the kulaks and people who resisted led to people being killed, put in work camps, forced onto communal farms, and starved to death. The lack of crop yields led to mass starvation, and about 5 to 6 million people died over about a 5-year stretch in the late 20s and early 30s. So it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. Anne Applebaum writes about it in Stalin's Famine, I think she calls it. Can't believe any history that was told from governments. To be fair, almost all history have some government approval to them. Look up the Battle of Avier. I will do that. Thank you, Techno Sniper. Is Scotland the greatest country on earth? It's one of the greatest. Was Christianity instrumentalized to destroy the... Already answered that. Are Ashkanazis from the Khazar Empire? No. Ashkenaz, if you understand the way the Jews understand what an Ashkenazi is. Now, Ashkenazis were indeed the European Jews, and many of them lived in Ukraine and Eastern Europe. I know about this. I know about, I believe his name is Bulan, the king in that area who converted to Judaism, but there were Jews all throughout the Western Roman Empire that were far away from there, like in France or Gaul and in Italy, and things like that. The Jews that settled in Europe and not Spain, Spain is different, eventually became known as the Ashkenazis because according to the Hebrew scriptures, one of the sons of Noah was Japheth, and one of his sons settled the European area, according to ancient beliefs, was Ashkenaz. And so Jews from that region are called Ashkenazi Jews. Many of them ended up in Poland and Eastern Europe, and unfortunately a lot of them perished in the Holocaust because the Nazis turned their attention to Jews in that region who had been exiled from areas like England and France. Yeah, I need to read Sanofsky's book. That sounds amazing, Cedric, and it's good to see you, by the way. Do a kick flip. Nah, I'm okay. Did Ivan the Terrible kill his son? He got ticked off at how, according to legend, I don't know how much of this is true, he got ticked off that his son's wife was not dressed properly, had a fracas with him, and then hit him with his cudgel, and the guy died, and his son died. Ivanovich. You guys can check out my series on the Russian Tsars to learn more. Wants to take control of Palestine. Why does Israel want to take control of Palestine? Any thoughts? The Israeli model seems to be now that we have been wanting to work with them in some sort of way to create a two-state solution. They don't want to anymore, so we'll just kill them, and we'll take all their land. That seems to be, the United States is coming in and starting to say pump the brakes on that idea, thank God, because I don't want more dead Gazans. I know you guys probably don't. So, yeah. The settlements in the West Bank are a stupid idea if anyone really wants a two-state solution. It looks like the two-state solution probably includes some sort of reformed Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, with Gaza being controlled by the Egyptians. That's what the ceasefire is, some of the terms of a ceasefire. The Anunnaki are supposedly ancient aliens or angels or whatever you want to call, who visited the Assyrians and gave them technology and ideas. They are tantamount in some ways to the Nephilim or the giants in the Old Testament. Every single civilization in history has talked about giants, and there's a reason for that. I don't know if it's because giants actually lived, aliens actually visited here. I don't know. But I'm saying that human beings have this association in their minds culturally throughout different continents and areas of legends of giants, of powerful men and women, and of aliens and people visiting from the stars and angels and stuff like that. Meaning either it tells us something psychologically about humans, or something was going on in our primeval world long before people were writing about 6,000 years ago, in our prehistory that's quite complex and different from what we're used to now. How do you make sure the history you are reading from books is not American version of history, like in UK textbooks there's no mention of colonialism? That's a great question, Sam. I do my best to look at different sources. I look at the history from below. What are marginal sources telling me? I'm not just going to believe the textbook narratives on history, because textbooks don't actually tell the full story and are just extraordinarily generic in throwing out facts. It's like reading a story in the news and then actually going into an article that analyzes it and gives a case study by an academic paper. That's what you have to do. So looking at marginal sources, looking at conflicting sources, hearing the accounts of people who lived through, if you can, that's all extremely important. Thoughts on Trump's first term pardon of the U.S. Blackwater militiamen who shot and killed some 30 people in Iraq. Can you talk about this, the Nissar Square massacre? I don't know what he was thinking by pardoning them. I've heard of the Nissar Square massacre, and it was one of these things where there's always this tension in the war on terror with the United States when they shouldn't have been there probably in the first place. But are civilians actually secretly operatives? And this was sometimes the case that really worried people. The story of American Sniper deals with this. So, thoughts on political or just history? I don't know what you're saying. Thank you, Emperor. I appreciate that. Well, people saying bad stuff on me, I hear it all the time. Believe me, yesterday was quite difficult. Did you see my comments? Have you heard of the Finders Cult? Thank you, Drew, for the donation. I really appreciate that. No, I actually haven't. Finders Cult. Interesting. Please tell me about it. Not Drew, I shouldn't say. Dayu? I hope I'm saying that correct. Did Finland commit a genocide? When has Finland ever been accused of committing a genocide? Long live Ottoman and Turks. Yeah, the Ottomans are a fascinating empire. Don't get the attention that they deserve. Some of the Khazar Empire did convert to Judaism. I do my best to address all the history that's brought to me. Who was the second and why? I don't know what you're talking about. Good to see you, Rodolfo. Harsonet, Rodolfo, and Harry always do such a great job of holding down the chat. What were the politics in the Latin Christian church as the Roman Empire was falling? Did German invaders just try to attack Rome? They did several times. Most of it was to get attention and payment because they had been hired by the Romans, like the guy who burned Rome in 410, Alaric, the Visigoths. They had actually worked for the Romans, but the Romans didn't pay them properly. A bunch of barbarian Goths were allowed to settle in the Eastern Roman regions in Dalmatia, modern-day Hungary, by the Eastern Roman emperors. The Roman birth rates and population were decreasing, and the need for soldiers brought the idea that you could hire the barbarians, give them land or resources or money or food, and they will work for you. When your currency is deflated though, and you give them money, it doesn't mean much, so you actually have to give them more money, more land, or more food. And it's a vicious cycle. Alaric wasn't properly paid, and because of that, he sacked Rome in 410. And it's interesting, as the civil order began to decline, the one side of the double eagle, the sacred order of the eagle started to ascend, and the Catholic Church became more and more the predominant force. By the middle of the 5th century, the Pope had the sway to talk Attila the Hun out of sacking Rome, not the emperor. Let me see here. So what are you proposing or advocating for? I don't know what I was proposing or advocating. Oh, dude's got it. If it was during the satanic panic of the 1980s, they were involved in child trafficking worldwide and were practicing Satanism. FBI released documents on them. I'll have to read about them. The Finders Cult. There was a huge panic in the 1980s as America swung to the right in the evangelical Christians, the religious right, the moral majority gained more and more of a following with Ronald Reagan as president. There was a huge fear, especially in California of all places, not surprising to some people, that there were Satanists working at daycares that were abducting and killing children. This wasn't true, but I will look into this cult because you take an example of one group of people that are Satanists and then apply it to everyone at daycares and everyone. It was all suggestive, it was all manipulative, and it was basically a witch hunt. No pun intended with the Satanism thing. But thank you, dude, for telling me about that. Do all Europeans and Asians except Israelite and Arabs come from Japheth? That's the belief. I'm not saying that's true or not. We know it's far more complex than that, historically and anthropologically. But I'm saying that's why Ashkanazi refers to European Jews. Why did the Nazis hate the Jews? A food pun. Hello, United States. You must be busy. You're a country. Are you familiar with the Wahlbergs' family involvement in the Treaty of Versailles, which led to mass starvation in the early 20s? The Warburgs. I'm not. You're going to have to help me with that, Emperor. The Assyrian defeated my ancestors, the Kushites. Yes, the Assyrians conquered Kush for a while, and actually Kush controlled Egypt for a while. Nobody talks about Kush Nubia, who built more pyramids than the Egyptians did, and conquered the Egyptians. I'm talking about any type of history, any type of culture, and if that includes religion, it's some of that. Is evolution true? I'm not a scientist. I mean, we have records and evidence historically of human beings being around longer than necessarily 10,000 years. I wasn't there at the beginning and neither were you, so I'm going to leave that open to debate. But there's obviously evidence of evolutionary science, but macroevolution is obviously hard to observe directly. Let me see here. PhD. Everything you have some kind of encyclopedia in your head, or does history just flow through you? Let the history flow through you, Sky Pigeon. How can he explain a jinn? He is not Muslim. Okay. I can hear the more than you remember the last few days. You've been your brain buzzing, so my deja vu, it seems so true. Those were nightmares you want to evolve. Your one is... Are you just singing? Are you quoting like a song right now? Did the Arabs aid the British in destroying the Ottoman Empire in exchange for Palestine? Somewhat. The Arabs did that in order to take back control of Mecca and Medina. The Arabs have been oppressed by the Ottoman Turks, the Turks are not Arabs. They are Muslims, but they're not Arabs for a long time. And something people need to realize is that for centuries, the idea of a peaceful Middle East isn't fully true. You had the Shia Safavid Empire in Persia, I don't know who it was, but we were talking about Persia earlier, fighting against the Sunni Ottoman Empire. They're called the gunpowder empires because they were the ones to really utilize gunpowder in an amazing and magnificent military advancement. They did it better than the Europeans did before the Europeans did. The Europeans just eventually mass-produced because of the Industrial Revolution. But basically, the Arabs helped, in 1916, the Arab Revolution starts in, as the Brits, a guy like T.E. Lawrence, for instance, do everything they can to encourage the Arabs to overthrow their Ottoman oppressors and help them, basically get their own independence. I don't know how much of that was getting Palestine. I'm sure part of that was the issue. And by the way, this was the flag. This very familiar, and you can't see the red is the background, but the black, white, green, and red is the Pan-Arabic flag that was used by the Arab Revolution starting in 1916 that the T.E. Lawrence helped, that the British were encouraging in order to overthrow the Ottomans. It was all to win the Great War. What time is it in my country? It's many different times because it's the U.S. I'm sorry, Dew, I was not ignoring your super chat. I've got a lot here. I'm trying to catch up. Do you think people would have read more history and philosophy if there were enough high-paying jobs that STEM graduates often get? Yes, definitely. But I don't want you taking my job. Would you date a woman with a high body count? Am I Andrew Tate now? Are you just asking me Andrew Tate questions? Here's what I'm going to do. If you guys join and become members and we get a members-only chat, we can talk about stuff like that, and I can reveal more about who I actually am. My moderators don't know my name. You guys don't know my name. You don't know where I live. I don't share that kind of stuff. So if you want to know more about me and my personal views on different issues or my opinions, maybe we can do a super chat a private chat for members. So consider becoming a member here at the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, and while you're at it, like and subscribe. Yes, I'm doing my best to address the questions. Did Albert Einstein ever say that the Fourth World War would be fought with sticks and stones? Thank you, John. You're accepting my dichotomy of 3 world wars. Let me see. I think he did say that because of the use of atomic weapons. What we know is maybe Sky Pigeon, or not Sky Pigeon, maybe Saeed's right about that he was referring to how humans would be outnumbered by the aliens, outgunned. What we know is that people the government want teach us it does that, not the truth. Absolutely, Nelson. I agree with you, whatever you just said. Did Samson exist? Don't know. I mean, so this is a common thing. I know that the book of Judges in the Old Testament is supposed to be a historical narrative. We do know that there was a confederacy of Israelite tribes that conquered the Canaanite areas in the 12th and 11th centuries. And we know this because of the rise of the Davidic kingdom soon afterwards. Was there a period of judges? Supposedly there was, and Samson may have very well been one of those judges. I always say this on the channel when talking as a historian. I do not say, basically, there is a lot of historical accounts in the Bible, and yes, they include these miracles from God and these incredible occurrences that wouldn't make sense anywhere else. Well, guess what? The Greek historians like Thucydides and Herodotus did the same dang thing. Every historian in the ancient world talked about how his gods had helped his side win the war. So there is nothing wrong with Christian gods doing the same thing in the narratives of or the Jewish God doing the same thing in the narrative of the Hebrews, the Old Testament, or the Christian God in the Gospels doing the same thing. It's just how history is written even by those people back then. Let me see here. Thank you, Dew, for telling me about the Finder's Cult and Franklin scandal. So where are all these millions of boats and armor from not so long ago, these Roman wars? Many of them were destroyed, burned. The biremes and the triremes, where they would basically, Roman naval fighting was brutal. It was just slam into your enemy and destroy the center of their ship, and then board the sinking ship and kill as many of them as you can if it's not sinking. That was how Agrippa won the Battle of Actium in 31 BC and allowed Augustus to defeat Antony and Cleopatra and rise to power. Did you know that the United States passed its first anti-child labor law in 1984? We were like industry capitalist mad. Are you sure it's not the UK? You say we're, that's not... But you're a Brit. Truth is but a fable agreed upon. Yes, that's what Napoleon said, and I don't necessarily... He was talking about history. I don't really fully agree. How do you interpret what George Washington said a president is supposed to be? I think Washington saw the president as almost like an extension of the third branch of the judiciary, that he is supposed to judge the situation and act with what he thinks is right with the Constitution and not supposed to overstep his bounds. The imperial presidency, where the president is supposed to do everything for us, I know a lot of people think that Trump has created this. It has existed for a long time. Theodore Roosevelt was really the first president to really hammer it home, and Andrew Jackson kind of did before. Lincoln had to do it in some cases, and Lincoln's the best president. Sorry, Steve, I know you're watching. He's the best president. That's just a sign. But the truth of the matter is there's presidents who had to do it in the 19th century. In the 20th century, all presidents tried to do it after Franklin Roosevelt, starting with his cousin Theodore Roosevelt, who basically believed that the presidency was the bully pulpit. He could use it to get things done, not just recommend legislation, but military interventions, control the armed forces. This is all out of the speak softly and carry a big stick idea. So, why are there pyramid structures from different civilizations? Is there something in common? Again, it's one of these things where the narrative seems to be the case throughout different civilizations in different areas for different reasons. And it's like that there's pyramids in Asia, there's pyramids in Africa, there's more pyramids in South America than in Egypt. Human beings have this desire, and you can see it in Gothic cathedrals or in the ziggurats of Nebuchadnezzar, the ancient Babylonian Sumerians, to ascend as high as you can. That's why you have to build megaliths, to get to the gods, or to God. It's the same, and Christianity even carries this all the way into the medieval period. What's the connection between Ukraine and Israel? They're supported by the West, generally speaking, against their opponents. Oiva, great to see you. Let me see here. British lied to the Arabs and rule over them. Kind of. The British really kind of let them to their own devices. That's why they had a mandate. And then they kind of let a lot of those areas go. They did control Yemen for a while. A lot of diction through memory, just saying you have an incredible gift, massive verify of human history. Thank you, I really appreciate that. Hello, Dave. I answer a question. I mean, if someone asks me, I don't mind, but I'm just not going to answer. I'm good, Naf. I hope you are good too. You guys both deserve extras, exactly. But we need to get members, and we need to get a private chat. We need to get all of that stuff going. So. And Cherish, I really appreciate that. I try to be everyone's favorite history guy. Have you heard Scott Thornton? What do you think about what he says? He was just on Tucker's podcast. I want to listen to that just so that I can disagree with him, because whenever Tucker Carlson talks about history, I know I'm going to be upset. The Doyle interview was just ridiculously stupid. I'm sorry. I understand where they're coming from, but it's this anti-intervention attitude. When you have a narrative driving your history, you run into problems. That's why I have problems with the 1619 Project, and that's why I have problems with Tucker Carlson. And to be fair, a lot of historians had a narrative drive. I mean, Josephus was writing to justify why Vespasian had come to the throne, because he was hired by Vespasian to do that. So even ancient historians struggled with this. I do my best to explain the pyramids. Thank you. Let me see. Lincoln wanted to send the Africans back to Africa after freedom. Yes, but they had been in America for so long, they decided to free them. 13th Amendment, give them citizenship. 14th Amendment, and the right to vote, the 15th Amendment. Let me see. Look at Britain in the 1800s. They were capitalist nut jobs like they were capitalist. They were laissez-faire. Definitely laissez-faire. More laissez-faire. I don't think that pure laissez-faire, just like I don't think pure communism has ever existed, either one of those, on either end of the economic political spectrum. Let me see here. I'm catching up with the chat. I'm sorry if I skipped over your question. We're running out of time though, and I want to get over to X soon. I will check out Scott Horton's thing though. I'm always open to hearing new perspectives, even if I know I'm going to disagree with it. Let me see. What is going on? Who is arguing? I don't know what's going on in the chat. We only left the Middle East because America was like, you need to get out of the Middle East. Yeah, that sounds about right. The Obama administration. Trump, greatest president to ever exist. Keep crying about it. I'm not crying. I'm talking about history. When is the Discord coming? So I want to do a Discord. I want to set up a Discord maybe this week, and I want to do a couple of streams where I'm just talking about random history facts while playing a nice RTS game like Rome Total War or Rise of Nations or something like that. So, Theo Vaughn administration. I've never actually listened to Vaughn's podcast, but I've seen clips of it. AIPAC owned the Congress in U.S. politics. AIPAC definitely has its fingers in a lot of pies, both Republican and Democrat in the United States. Not going to argue with you. I look like your brother, Tay? I would say we could have a Discord up in a week, and we can try that out. Can you try out Chuck Swindoll? Who is Chuck Swindoll? Like a date? No, Hars, I don't want to date you. War of Independence was basically third, fourth, fifth generation Brits in the U.S. fighting Brits. Yep, pretty much to some extent. So yeah, if you haven't, please like and subscribe. And does anyone have questions about history and social studies? Because I'm caught up to the chat. We've got 5 minutes to go. Yeah, we're gonna do a stream of video games, and I will probably post that stream on YouTube afterwards. But I kind of want to do it only on Discord, just so that we only get that. Do a date of when we get the Discord, not like that. Oh, I'm sorry. Hars was offended. I'm not sure. Who, Judge Neapolitano? What are you referring to? Interesting. Chuck Swindoll, Sassin Empire. I will go check that out. Thank you, John. I don't, it's a website. I can probably post the link for it on YouTube ahead of time and schedule it. I don't know exactly how it works. Yeah, 1.5 billion in 99 days is just stupid. Yep, Americans spend a lot on politics. Citizens United. For the win, or for the loss, I should say. What are you doing for the anniversary of the French Revolution? I'm going to be doing a video on, we're going to be talking about the celebration of Bastille Day, which is considered the start of the French Revolution, although it should be June 30th. That's coming up. That's next, today's the 5th, that's next Monday, I believe. So I will probably be doing my long-form video, which I do every Monday and Friday, for that topic. What do you think of the Greater Israel Project? Do you think they stop expanding after Gaza? I don't know if they're ever going to get Gaza at this point. If the ceasefire goes through and they actually end that war, I don't think the United States is letting them. Believe it or not, the United States is stopping. So, let me see. Hello, Ashat. Do you mind? Is that the Armenian flag I see? Do you mind doing a review of Chuck Swindoll's Khazarian Mafia's video for the next stream? Oh, jeez. I'll have to go watch the video and see. I'm not sure. Tomorrow's live stream lecture. Which, again, I'm also trying to create a podcast which would be different from the live stream will be on the American Revolution and that movement. Geopolitics with experts. And who is that? Black? Judge Neapolitano? I'll have to look into that too. So I got Chuck Swindoll, I've got Roy Casangrada, I've got Judge Napolitano. Europeans in America should go back to Europe. I'm good. I'm a European in America. I'm happy. Respect to all the history buffs out here. Greetings from Sweden. And greetings to you. Thank you for joining us from the wonderful country of Sweden. Thank you, John. I will check it out. Can you do reactions? What do you mean, reactions or something like that? Please, always ready. Don't scream your comments. When you do all caps, like screaming. Netanyahu can't stop this war, or he's in prison. The ceasefire going through is not likely. Israel's agreed to the ceasefire. I mean, I do news here on the channel every day, so I have to keep up on this. Israel's agreed to it. It's Hamas that has to agree to it. Are Israel a legal state due to Balfour Declaration, since experts from Europe were dumped into Palestine where natives were already living? There were already Jews living in the area before the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration was just the British acknowledging the right for a Jewish state in the Levant. It said nothing about the Palestinians not having another state in the Levant. The Jordanians and Lebanese are technically in the Levant too, so. Well, always ready. You must have your face right up to the camera if you can smell my breath from there. Touch your nose if you're real. There you go. I hope you're enjoying that ice cream, Solomon, on a hot day. Watching from NZ, New Zealand. Wow, that's fascinating. Thank you for joining us from there. I mean, like reacting to other YouTube videos. There's a lot of videos. I have a reaction video to this guy who did SpongeBob, but for history, for U.S. presidents, but it was SpongeBob. I'm going to do one for Thomas the Tank Engine historical events because I want to do something fun. But yeah, I can do Chuck Swindoll. I'm Roy Casangrada and Judge Napolitano. Thank you for the recommendations. Is this some Israel-Palestinian talk? Which side are you repping? I'm repping the peace side, which neither side seems to be very interested in, unfortunately. I'm a historian. I understand geopolitics, at least I try to, and I try to use my history to understand the geopolitical situation and to understand that you have to go into a lot of detail about what both sides have done and how they've messed that up. Yes, please do, Hars. There were like 3% Jews at the time. A growing Jewish population that had started migrating to that region from the 19th century. There were larger numbers of Arabs living in that area at the time. Thanks, Naf. I guess I'm low-key. I don't know what low-key hot means. I guess I'm like a 7. Jews were already living there, but they were European Jews or Arab Jews, such as the Mizrahim moved into Israel when they were kicked out of all the other Arab countries after Israel became a nation. And some of them were already migrating. And then you have the Sephardim. A lot of the Jews today are Mizrahim Jews, who are the Arab Jews. Remember, the Balfour Declaration came out because the British were confronting the reality of the Ottoman Empire completely fracturing a huge number of territories. Yes, the British wanted to administer that area. That's why it was called the Mandate of Palestine. From Singapore, Siddhartha, thank you for joining us from Singapore. Sorry about my spelling. I'm using voice control. I'm washing dishes. It's okay, James. I'm so glad you're here. Are you Christian, by the way? Don't share my religious beliefs. I talked about it a lot because history and religion are together, but yeah. There will be a Discord for the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. Okay, I'm at 3% of my battery. I'm gonna move everything around. I'm gonna go on X. You guys can join me over on X for another hour. I finally figured out how to do the chat there, so hopefully it works. If not, I'm gonna come back here. But I figured out I had to get verified. I had to get the little blue check mark on X, and now I can do a live stream on X and answer all of your questions related to history and social studies. I hope you've enjoyed this one. I am ending at the 60-minute mark. I'm not going over, and I did start on time. At what threshold does something become history? Yesterday, I would say that contemporary history would include everything up to the present. That's what I'd say. For the Jews are from Israel for their Holocaust area. Many Jews went to that area because of that. Yeah. I know you don't want to share your religious beliefs, but do you know you can have some bias with religion? Yes, which is why I don't share my beliefs, because I don't want people to expect a bias. All right. Anyways, yes, I know they rejected the idea. I don't know if it was full control of Palestine, but it was control of large sections of Arabia, which the Sauds took over. So they mandated and then gave it to them. Anyways, so I'm jumping on over to X. Join us there. If you haven't liked and subscribed, and if you can't join us there, then I will see you tomorrow at the live stream LEC. 4 p.m. Eastern here, where I'll be discussing the American Revolution and the Declaration of Independence. So yeah, on X, I figured out how to add chat, so you can ask me anything you'd like there, and we'll keep this going for another hour of Friendly Neighborhood History. I haven't gotten any numbers. I've only done one live stream on X, and I had like 20 people, and I couldn't figure out the chat, and then I tried to do it on Instagram, it didn't work there either. So, Shuriken, great to see you. Anyways. All right, I will see you guys over there on X, hopefully, and if all else fails, I'll just jump back on here and just go for a few more minutes and then all that stuff. Take care, have a great week, and if I don't see you over on Twitter/X, love history. Bye-bye now.